Hey everybody, this is quite a bombshell. I, as you probably did, heard the news that there's a possibility that Coach Payton might step down, but um, I didn't believe he was actually going to do something like that. And turns out, as of roughly just over an hour ago, he did do just that. He announced that he's going to step away from the New Orleans Saints, and he's a coach who leaves a legendary footprint. Um, as well as a ton of questions among them. Foremost, what's going to happen with Jameis Winston's future? And it's not that the Saints are going to make any decisions, but it's more a question of what kind of decision Jameis is going to make regarding his future. In other words, would he focus on the Saints as a home still, even with this tremendous state of flux, this sudden change that has occurred in his life because Sean Payton made him the starter of the team last year. He posted a 5-2 record, and by the measure of anyone who has even half of a knowledge of football, had he remained healthy without the horse collar tackle and the ACL damage, the Saints would have been in the playoffs and possibly playing in the NFC Championship by now. But of course, as you know, that didn't happen. And so the question is, what will Jameis do? What kind of what or how does he see this? I've made a number of reaches to a number of people that I know who can speak intelligently on this, or at least text intelligently on this, and waiting for feedback. But and also, I understand that I understand that the Saints are going to hold a press conference. I don't know if it's going to include Coach Payton or not, but clearly the Saints knew this was coming. As Eric Rader says, this is Zinni crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. Eric has really nailed it right on the head. And Eric, thank you very much, by the way, for posting the video about the possibility of Sean Payton coming to the Raiders, which would be really interesting. But let's look at the tweets before we get too carried away regarding what is said here. And I'm also keeping one eye. And if someone out there like Eric, or can you keep one eye on the New Orleans Saints YouTube channel? Let me know if press conference suddenly pops up. And we can go from there. But right now, what we're looking at is here are the tweets. This all regarding Sean Payton, and I'll make them bigger, or rather closer, so you can see what was tweeted. And I'll zoom in, and then zoom in, and then zoom in again here, and zoom in one more time. Feeling sources: Sean Payton has informed the Saints that he is stepping away. That was Ian Rappaport an hour ago. And Pro Football Talk says a close look at how close Sean Payton came to becoming the Cowboys coach in 2019, and how Anthony Davis kept it from happening. And I just got a text from someone in Winston's camp who says, "We're good, my man, trusting in the Lord, not leaning on our understanding." And that's it right now. They're taking a wait and see position. Um, but as far as the Winston's camp is concerned, they're great, and everything is great. So it could mean that, um, interpreting what I was just told by a text, it could mean that the Winston camp basically thinks that they have, if Jameis Winston stays there, a clear shot at being the number one. Because remember, there was a competition between Taysom Hill. It was sort of a fake competition between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. And I think there are a number of ways to look at that. My thought was that ownership pushed that competition, but a number of people who know Coach Payton better than I do say, no. Sean has always had this love affair, this thing about Taysom Hill. Well, quite obviously, that's gone. And I think the other question is going to be, well, what's Taysom Hill's future going to be after this? Because as long as Sean was around, Taysom had these dreams of being a starter. And arguably, he can throw that out of the window. But given what Jameis did last year, a new coach would be, I think, an absolute fool, or a new ownership structure would be absolute fool to let him go to another team. However, there are people who say that the Saints just want to blow the whole thing up and start all over again. Why? I don't know. It really raises a lot of questions. You don't step away from a job unless you don't like where you're at. Okay. And Janice Rice says, I thought the team picked Jameis and Payton couldn't get away with telling them Taysom won the competition. I don't think that's it. No, because of course I know that's not it. How could anyone with a straight face say that Taysom Hill won a competition that he didn't do well statistically in? I mean, that's nuts. Okay. That's absolutely nuts. Jameis Winston put on a virtuoso performance on Monday Night Football that shocked everybody. And it was just a matter of time, like a few days, before Sean Payton stated the obvious, that Taysom Hill is not the starter and Jameis Winston is. I don't understand this idea, and it is a crazy idea, that Taysom Hill is a starting quarterback that can get an organization to the playoffs on his own. Okay. That's and lead the league in passing and be effective as a quarterback without getting injured. We've seen that's not the case. We don't need demonstration after demonstration after demonstration after demonstration again. Okay. All right. So I don't think that's it at all. I think what it is that I believe that the reason Sean is stepping away has nothing to do with Jameis. If anything, I think he wants to re-sign Jameis because he knows that Jameis gives them the best chance first of all, he knows the system. And second of all, he was one of the league's best passers when he was injured. So it was Jameis' best career by far. Let me ask Andy Dolich what he thinks about this. Andy.
Bring every move in the NFL. Holy
Andy, how are you doing? This is my friend Andy Dolich, who I couldn't think of a better person to call, because if I can't get a hold of the president of the Saints, I might as well get a hold of a guy who's been the president of a number of sports teams, including the 49ers. How you doing, Andy? He's going to be on the show Fridays, but I had to just ping him.
That's great. We'll be talking about another sport, but it's always great to catch up with you, Zenny, in the world of the NFL, which changes every nanosecond.
No blinkety blank. What do you think about this? Sean just saying, hey, look, I'm stepping away.
Well, breaking news. One thing about the news of today and the news of the NFL, they do break news. And this time of year, I don't know what the number is, but I think there's 8 or 9 open coaching positions. That's a third of the league, almost a third of the league, and this happens every year. I think Sean has been there for 16 years, something like that. And you never know, and it will come out, I'm sure, in these kinds of circumstances, Zenny, is it coming from the top down, from the Benson family, or is it coming from the bottom up? Is this something that Sean wants to step away from, take a deep breath, and then be hired by another team 4 days from now? You never know that until it happens. But clearly, a coach in an organization that have accomplished a lot, that have been through a lot in terms of natural occurrences in their marketplace, have been the leader in their marketplace in bringing the community together, who dat. So I think all of these, when you're talking about significant entities, right? Because now just on the QB side, what's Tom Brady going to do? What's Aaron Rodgers going to do? What's Ben Roethlisberger going to do? Like, we've got other important decisions in our life, but people are focused on the NFL, especially since we have the ongoing, unbelievable, but totally believable story of our hometown 49ers.
Yeah, and from the standpoint of what you said, I think you said something that was right on about ownership, whether it was ownership or him. And I think too, when the current owner of the Saints, the wife of the late
Rita Benson, I
thank
think
you,
it is,
Rita Benson,
yeah,
made a comment that was mercurial, basically saying, I don't know what his next move is going to be, as opposed to saying, well, I don't know, but we'd really love to have him back. She didn't give him like a ringing endorsement.
That is always an area of, excuse me, what did she just say?
Yeah.
And as you look at all the teams in pro sports, there's 3 basic areas that I've always looked for in places that I've been or other teams that I know about and have colleagues: teamwork, leadership, and trust. It seems very simple, but if you were to analyze, the 122 teams in the Big 4 sports, how many of them have that year after year after year? Very, very few. The Saints have had it. Coaches who've been at any team for a long time will tell you that their voice sort of gets dimmer or quieter if the players have been there a while. The coach's voice doesn't resonate. But when an owner has any kind of question, any gray area like that, which comes to the media because there are no secrets, and you know it better than anyone, that's a pause for concern. And he clearly has a magnificent brand. We're not worrying about where his next dollar's coming from. And now this is just another major speculation of, well, who's going to be next? Is he staying with the organization for 2 years, which, could be, or is he done and going someplace else, or just taking a timeout?
Do you think that his decision has anything to do with the fact that in Las Vegas there's an opening for head coach for the Raiders?
Well, it's a perfect area to speculate on. I think you just did it 1.5 seconds ago. So sure. There's been so many names thrown into the hopper. I would say, though, if you look at the circumstance at the Raiders right now, boy, there's a lot of questions. And if you look at their management of everybody that's left, from Gruden to Mayock to the player problems that they've had, to the just horrific circumstance of Coach Madden leaving, who I think Mark Davis did speak to from time to time. My real question is, who does Mark Davis talk to now about filling these key positions? General manager, coach, Mark Bedane leaving. I mean, you've got the key people on both the football side, which is most important, but the business side is also incredibly important, because let's not forget that, in 2020, they didn't generate any revenue revenue because fans weren't allowed in the new stadium.
That's right.
And the banks asked for that money back from the state. So I think somebody like a Sean Payton, totally speculative, would want to go to a franchise that is more stable. However, that being said, Zenny, I've always been a big believer that the color of the fluid that flows through the veins of sports is green.
Green, absolutely.
And if there's enough green, there was a guy who signed a $100 million contract with the Las Vegas Raiders named John Gruden. $100 million. So you never know.
Hey, you made me think about something. The name on the Superdome, I think for $123 million, was Caesars Superdome, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think you see where I may be going with this. Since they also have sponsorship with the Raiders, could it be that either they or perhaps one of those casinos said, you know what? Why don't you come to Las Vegas? And we'll pay the freight.
I want to make sure I understand. Are we talking the name on Allegiant Stadium, the name in New Orleans?
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, we're talking about them putting their name on New Orleans Superdome, but
right. And Mercedes-Benz, isn't it?
It was Mercedes-Benz. Now it's Caesars, right? Yeah, they changed it. So what I'm saying is, why not? Could it be that they might say to the Raiders in Las Vegas, hey, we'll pay the freight for Sean Payton. Let's get him to Las Vegas.
It is, again, it goes through what kind of financial package can you talk about. Literally in today's world of sports, in every sport, you're dealing with numbers going to the talent, the players, and the coaches. That is higher than what some franchises sold 4 years ago. That's kind of hard to comprehend, but it's the way the world works. If Mike Trout is making $350 million as a baseball player, how much did, Artie Moreno pay when he actually bought the team however many years ago? So any kind of opportunity, especially where gaming is becoming that much more of a talking point, even though it's not immediately going to the teams and the leagues, there's no doubt that legalized gaming on all sports is going to be a major factor, just like broadcasting is now.
Also, my other question would be, from your position and experience, isn't it shocking, or am I misreading it, that an owner would be so cavalier about the head coach that brought them Super Bowls, playoff appearances, and which translates to, as you know better than I do, sponsorship money and green? Isn't it just sort of strange that they would say, or sound like it's no big deal?
Don't know what the context was. Answer to your question, yes. Any word that's uttered today is not a secret. I think the President of the United States knows that today. So open mic every place, and there's so much meaning that fans, because they're all holding their own broadcast entities in their hands, called a telephone, a digital device. So if you are an owner, if you're a decision maker for a team, you should be professional enough to understand that anything that you say is in the media, is in the public domain immediately, and you need to understand how many different ways that can be taken.
Now, if you are looking at it from the perspective of a player like Jameis Winston, who was the starter, got injured due to a horse collar tackle, but basically recreated his career and had the best year of his career in New Orleans. If you're advising Jameis, what are you saying to him? Do you say shop around or stick around, or what are you saying?
Wow, we're covering a lot of territory here, Zen.
I'm taking advantage of your intellect here. This is valuable.
All right. Well, when that occurs,
checks in the mail.
Okay. Yeah. Call me back when that occurs. I would just say, take a deep breath. Let's see what rolls out here. You're guaranteed. You're in a football, just crazy loving marketplace. Let's see what happens here, because there's going to be so much speculation, and in order not to do ready, fire, aim, I would, in any kind of decision making, whether it's a significant player and his capability or management, I would just say, let's settle, see which way we're going here, and then we can make decisions. Players are the ones with talent. Let's never forget that.
You ever had a situation like this in your history that made that happen, and you had to adjust suddenly?
Well, I was never the only position I had in my career in sports is when I was in the old North American Soccer League, and I was actually the general manager of the team along with my business responsibilities. And that was, a time when most people who listen to you weren't born, so I won't go there. My other positions have always been on the business management side, so it wasn't the player-driven side, but I have always been a gigantic proponent. And I just think back to our wonderful days with the A's, where you'd have Ricky Henderson and Dave Stewart and Carney Lansford and Dennis Eckersley and so many local, literally born in Oakland players. You'd want to keep those. And now you look at the roster and there's nobody home from a local standpoint. And, what we'll talk more about on Friday, where's Marcus Simeon? You couldn't have had a more incredible, wonderful spokesperson, and more importantly, heck of a baseball player, and he was bye-bye.
Yeah. And on that note, Sean Payton was instrumental in the recovery of New Orleans after
exactly.
Right? And together with my friend Doug Thornton, who manages the Superdome to this day,
a great guy, and I know Doug, and as I said, the role that they played, the part of the DNA that was already in New Orleans and Louisiana before that was just so much more emotionally brought forth, because I was in the marketplace several times after Katrina for other business, and until you were there, you can't possibly understand the devastation and how many years it took. And, you'd also look at the incredible success of the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Zenny, you never would have thought that the first team in Vegas of the Big Four sports leagues would be a National Hockey League team. No way. But it was, and the role that they played after the horrific shooting helped to underscore their understanding of the market, and the market who wouldn't have known, a hockey puck from a poker chip went, wow, these guys are great. They get us, and they're helping us come back from something that nobody should ever have experienced.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I remember 1 October, like it happened yesterday, and the devastation that it wrought on Las Vegas and the United States as a culture. And you're absolutely right about their impact.
Those type of circumstances, and what Sean and the rest of the players and the Drew Breeses and the Bensons and others who brought back, and we can go back historically and think about the A's and the Giants in '89 and what that meant to getting the community back.
The Loma Prieta earthquake
resumed after the Loma Prieta quake.
Yep.
Those are important moments in a community's maturity, and it also can define a team and an ownership who either get it or don't get it.
You want a crystal ball where you think Sean's going to land? Some people say television. I wonder.
I'm not good on crystal balls, so the fact that this has just occurred, I want to read some more, listen to some people that I might know in the business before I take out the crystal ball. The only thing I use the crystal ball with is to understand the Powerball numbers and Mega Millions numbers. And
ditto.
I have not been very successful, Zenny.
Oh, I missed. I waffed on Saturday, so hey, I can tell you, it was like, what can I say? Andy, we'll see you on Friday.
We'll talk on Friday, right?
You got it. Hey, folks, join us Friday at 2:00 p.m., 5:00 Eastern. Andy Dolich. I'm not stopping now, but I want you to come back and hear more of this great man who's I'm blessed to have on the show after years of trying.
Oh, it's not years. It's a lot of months. It's not years.
Okay.
We'll be on. I look forward to it. Be safe, Zenny.
You got it. I'll see you. Thanks. All right. I see. So, folks, that was Andy Dolich. And, he basically called it from his position. Andy has held a lot of roles. We met in 1996 when I was economic advisor to Oakland Mayor Elihu Harris, and in part responsible for matters going on at the Coliseum with the sports teams. And we had an electricity dispute, if you will, which we resolved in fine and humorous fashion. Anyway, Andy and I stayed in touch. You can tell over the years. I saw him at the Berkeley Law School Sports Symposium a couple of years ago, where I actually met some other people who had a very famous player as their representative. So at any rate, that was a great time had by all. So anyway, Andy looked at it as, I think the telling comment for me is his response to what the owner of the Saints initially said when she talked about his departure, talking about Sean Payton now, possible departure then, not certain, from the Saints. It was all, I don't know what he's going to do. It was all very cavalier. So there's something more going on. Maybe we can go back to Twitter and get some idea of what that something just might be, and get a better picture of what's going on in this entire situation. Again, I'm waiting for the press conference to start that will hopefully give us some further background on what's going on here before I disengage for later. But if you have a comment, just type it in there and we'll get it out there. And I want to again thank Andy for chiming in yeoman's way last minute. So I'll call you back and boom, adding his expertise. So here's Twitter. And let's go back here. First of all, let's go to the Saints channel and see if there's any. And there's no video. There's thank you, Saints fans. That's about it. But there's no video there. Let's see. Let's type Sean Payton in YouTube. And we have to be mindful of copyright issues. So there are people who think he's going to head to the Cowboys. This was 58 minutes ago. I don't want to play this for you, but I want you to hear it. This is ESPN. Confirming reports that are out here. Sean Payton, the Saints head coach, has told the team he's stepping away, that he's going to step down and retire. Saints are going to have a press conference later today to discuss this. But bombshell news on the coaching landscape. Sean Payton stepping away from the Saints, according to our Mike Triplett and various other reports, and that makes 9 current head coach openings.
So he said to retire? That was
stepping away is what our Mike Triplett is reporting. Okay. So I don't want to throw around a word like retire if that's not what's
stepping away. Maybe just from the Saints.
That's what I was.
There are some job openings around the NFL.
But he's under
right. So there you go. That's what Max Kellerman just said. There are some job openings around the NFL, but we're waiting to see what. And I'm waiting to see what. Here we go, folks. I'm going to take you over to this press conference that is going to start. I'll stop that screen and start this one any second now. And let's see here. We can do this a different way and get this done. Okay. So I'll copy that. And then I'll go down to Twitter here. Put that here, like so. And then I'll select this screen. See if we can get this. No, that's not it. And that's it. There it is. Okay. So we're here. All right. We are here. Valerie Connor. Valerie says, interesting. Valerie says there's nothing going on between Sean and Mrs. Benson. The man is tired of all the Roger Goodell antics. Can you elaborate on that, Valerie? I think I'm going to fill in the blank regarding the officiating, but Valerie, I think I'm going to leave that up there for a bit, because I do agree, Valerie, that there was some interesting shenanigans, it seems, and I'll call them just like that, going on with officiating that would lead you to think that the league was against the Saints. And so I'll sign on to that as a possibility, or as a contributing factor, okay? As a contributing factor in all of this. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I know he was on the competition committee and then not stepped down. And it did really seem like they were picking on him. And I remember, I recall the game where it looked like Tremere Simeon was just throwing the ball away and they called intentional grounding. Well, he was throwing a ball in a legal way. He was outside the pocket. And Sean just went, and then, of course, there was the holding call. And Sean just went ballistic. And he went on with the refs for what I thought was an inordinate amount of time. And what I mean by that is, normally you get upset about something and you say it for a bit, but he spent a significant portion of the game focused, and this was pointed out by television crew, this is Monday Night Football, focused on getting after the officials. And maybe he lost it. Maybe he was having a breakdown, and that led to that extended amount of time he was spending berating the officials. And I'm not saying what he did was wrong. He was right to be as upset as he was. He was very right. And maybe that combined with all the other stuff that happened last season, it was a major load for anyone. It was, as you know, started off with Hurricane Ida, and basically playing on the road a lot, being in the air a lot during the middle of the pandemic. And of course, there was just when it seemed like the 1-2 punch of Jameis Winston as starter and Taysom Hill's fill-in, playing his I call it U position, was really taking effect. Hill gets injured and he gets concussed. And then there was Trevor Siemian not performing as well as you'd like, but I blame that on the kind of game plan they installed for him. Just saying, okay. They were really spoiled. They were, more than spoiled by having Drew Brees. And I think for as long as they did, and in a very un-Bill Walsh-like fashion, and Bill Walsh is my intellectual football hero, the Saints didn't have a method of teaching the system in such a way that quarterbacks with different skills could come in and effectively contribute at a high level performance like Drew Brees. Now, for those of you who might bristle at that comment, I remind you that Bill Walsh was virtuoso at bringing in someone like a Jeff Kemp and having him perform and throw 4 touchdowns and 330 yards against the Rams in LA. And if you would say, Jeff, who? That's my point. Jeff Kemp is actually the son of Jack Kemp, who was a famed Republican congressman. Okay. And no, I'm not Republican, but I'm a Politico. So go figure. Anyway, that game I'll never forget because Everyone expected the 49ers to lose. The 49ers creamed the Rams with Jeff Kemp as backup. Okay? That was the headline. So there is a blueprint and a model for that kind of performance. I think Valerie says correct. I really didn't want to make up excuses for what has happened with the Saints over the past couple of years. I think it all went sour with Goodell and Sean after he called the refs out. Interesting. Interesting. I can't help but wonder about ownership. To me, there's some unwritten issue there, unreported issue there, that some behind the scenes comments, because ownership extends beyond just Mrs. Benson. It's also investors in the team, sponsors as well. I thought that they were pushing for Sean to start Taysom Hill over Jameis Winston. And he sure does. And I felt they were getting that pressure because a lot of people didn't really know Winston's true background. They got caught up in the headlines. But if you actually read the cases and do your research, you will come away with an entirely different view of Jameis Winston and what he went through. And I say just like that. And I've read, for example, the case regarding he and Erica her name just flew right out of my head for a second here. I read it 7 times, 760 pages of it. Okay. So my point is, and I don't want to go into excruciating detail about that because it's not necessary, but a lot of people just see the headline and reporting it. It's misreported, or the matter regarding the crab legs, which a friend did give to him, but didn't want to get fired. So he didn't admit to it. Or the matter regarding the Uber driver. It took her 2 years, and John Thune coming up, who was the same attorney that was involved in the Erica Kinsman case, there was her name, to step forward. And finally she files a lawsuit when a number of people, including myself as a longtime Winston fan, were saying, sue back, fight it in court. Well, his handlers at the time were saying, don't fight it. And that leads me to another comment. Jameis Winston, for a time, not right now, but Jameis Winston had representatives, people who were not in his corner, okay, who would put out information to the press against the wishes of his camp, who would basically, in a sense, trade off bad news about him, rather than trying to figure out how to keep bad news out or refashion it. They actually, and I'm not going to name names, but I can name one like that or two. They actually went about fanning the flames of him, trying to make him look bad. And so Jameis is in a better place now that they are gone and out of his life and his business life. Jameis Winston has not received the greatest representation. That has changed of late, but I will tell you that has been a strong part of his history. Now, in terms of the media availability, I think the key here to look for is who steps forward to talk. Okay, who is going to step forward to talk? Will it be Mrs. Benson? Will it be Mickey Loomis, the general manager? Who steps forward? Will it be the players? Because what you want to show here, and this is my hat, is you want to show that you have a stable organization, that you have a plan for the future, that you're not panicked, and that you basically, if it's true, that you gave him, Sean Payton, your legendary coach, the path to go free, relax, and get some rest and pursue his next endeavor, whatever that may be. That's how you should handle it. You should handle it with class, aplomb, and by all means, and I think more than anything else, calm. even interjecting a little humor where you can. But you want to really give the picture that the organization, because you have sponsors that are watching this, okay? You want to give a picture that the organization is intact and really does have a plan for the future. Are you going to appoint an interim head coach, or are you going to go out and on your own for a coaching search? If the Saints decide to appoint an interim head coach, which I think is a smart thing to do, then the possibility of Winston staying on, as opposed to taking a keener eye someplace else, increases by volumes. Okay, but and I know Winston's camp will agree with this. If they discover that there's a change in head coaches, and perhaps the coach they bring in is putting an offense, we're going to put in an offense that would cause Jameis to have to relearn everything yet again. And yet, on the other hand, you have this other team that runs a kind of Perkins-Erhardt offense, which is the kind of offense that Sean Payton had in, which is a kind of a variation of the Walsh offense. Then you're more likely to say, yeah, I'm going to go over here rather than stay. I'm going to go over there rather than stay here. Now, having said that, Jameis is a person who intelligently picks up offenses. He's a football junkie. And for all we know, he may know that this is happening or is about to happen before we do, or we did. And he may have already carved his path out for the future with the Saints. We don't know. I mean, this is all speculation. I do know that all of this will change at some point in the near future. I'm got to got this arrow, and let's see what's happening here. Still waiting. And still waiting. And we're still waiting. There are 2,400 and 2,246 that are watching this live stream now. And they just haven't stepped up to the plate yet, folks, at all. Let me see if there's any I'm writing back something. Yeah. So again, if you're just joining us, well, you know what's going on here. Let me see Twitter, see if there are any developments while we're waiting. I would switch over to screens, but I don't want to lose the starting. So I apologize for the cartoons and everything. If you have any comments, write them. Valerie says Sean Payton is having a press conference right now. Let me go and find that out. Find that. Thank you, Valerie. It's obviously not here. Let me go and get it. Let's see here. Press conference. And see, that was 2 weeks ago. This is live now.
The timing that you want them. But the point I'm making about Dennis is it's like a good baseball team right up the middle, from the catcher to the pitcher to the infield to the outfield. We were always in concert. It didn't mean we always agreed, but we were always in concert. And for a first-time head coach 16 years ago, that was important, and more important now that I look back on it than I ever realized. And so I thank you and appreciate you. We had a lot of trips. We had fun trips, crazy trips where the very first year before we drafted Reggie Bush, we were out selling tickets and listening to 80s music and trying to figure out who knew the words. And then when we drafted Reggie Bush, we sold out. And I'm like, thank God we don't have to go on those those freaking ticket bandwagon drives. We've been sold out ever since. Mickey Loomis, a dear friend. I would say more importantly, a friend, just as importantly, my general manager, and just as importantly, the person that gave me this opportunity. He took a chance on a first-time head coach, and you guys know kind of the batting average and the challenges for these positions. They're hard. Every year we're reminded of that. And I've written about this. I've spoken about it. And look, I had just interviewed in Green Bay with the late Ted Thompson. I thought I had a great interview. And when I landed here, it was right after Katrina in January. And many of you remember that. And I just thought, when I met Mickey, I thought, man, I like this guy. He's got a heck of a task ahead of him. And I kept looking at my flip phone at the time, waiting for that Green Bay area code to come in. And I got the message that evening that they had gone in a different direction. And I remember just throwing the phone into the pillow and thinking, holy cow. And it was the best thing that happened. And sometimes, again, you don't have any control over that. And so he trusted his gut. And beyond just hiring me, I can't think, we've had disagreements multiple times, and yet we've always been in concert. And so, one of my biggest, not concerns, but one of my biggest second thoughts was, man, I don't want to not be around this really, really good friend of mine. And so, so that's not going to happen. I mean, I'm actually moving into another property here locally, but more than my general manager, more than the person that hired me, more than all of those things is, I would say, one of my best friends. And I appreciate that. I mean, I could give you 1,000 stories that would be interesting because our personalities are so different. He walks slow. It bothers me. I want him to pick it up. When you make a decision like this, you spend time with your loved ones. You spend time with your family. I've got, a daughter who's out west in media trying to become what many of you are, and a son who's in college. A wife, Skylene, who we've been together for many years, 10 years, and got married last June. And I've confided in those guys quite a bit and talked about these decisions quite a bit. And I appreciate them. And they've been extremely just good listeners, because ultimately, we all want happiness for our friends. We want happiness and health for our friends and family. Those are the two things I think about. Maybe as I've grown older, if your children are happy and healthy, then you're blessed, I think. And so I feel like there's been a very steady listening group here, and without any angle relative to, hey, what is it that you're looking for? Because honestly, as I sit here today, and this is okay, I don't know what's next. And look, I read the reports and I understand. I've not spoken to anyone from a media outlet relative to doing television or radio. Maybe that opportunity arises. But every time I read something that says he's in line for this job, I'll call my agent, Don, and I'll say, Don, did you hear something? Because I have not heard anything. And that's okay. I think I'd like to do that. I think I'd be pretty good at it. But so Steppen stepping outside, like in the cold weather today, and being a little uncomfortable professionally or from a career standpoint is okay. I don't like the word retirement. Mr. B didn't like it either. He always said, retirement's overrated. We get sold this whole image of retirement by these investment groups on TV and golf courses and retirement. And so, I still have a vision for doing things in football. And I'll be honest with you, that might be coaching again at some point. I don't think it's this year. I think maybe in the future, but that's not where my heart is right now. It's not at all. I want to thank the media, and I feel this way, and I don't want you to nod your heads in agreement. You can tell me later, but when you come in as a young coach, you make a lot of mistakes, because you're trying to do everything you think you need to do, and it's not until you get older and more experienced that you realize the more important things are this and not that. And hopefully, in my latter years, you guys have found me very accessible, very friendly, very open, and maybe eager to please, or at least accessible. And that's what the Jenny's ice cream is for every off season and Christmas time. So, but I do appreciate your jobs, and I recognize, especially in the last 2 years, how difficult those have been. People don't understand when all of a sudden you practice inside, and with the COVID restrictions, the relationships that many of you have with our players, it's hard to do those jobs effectively as you might like. I mean, when's the last time you've been able to go into a locker room after a game? And we kind of miss that, really. I do, honestly, and going into the presser after a game and looking at a laptop. And so I appreciate every one of you. I think, and I've worked in a lot of places. I've been in New York, I've been in Philadelphia, I've been in Dallas. Those are big media markets. But I appreciate the relationships and the manner in which you guys have done your jobs. And I mean that, and probably knowing what I knew now, I probably handled my first 5, 6, 7 years differently relative to the media, where you come in and you just don't know enough yet. But thank you, and again, I'm going to see many of you for years to come. I want to thank the city and the fan base. I'm going to get into a little bit of 2006 and maybe the early journey, but I don't think any of us, when we started, certainly I didn't when I started, understood the dynamics and what took place post-Katrina with that 06 season that I thought, and I would argue, was every bit as important as any other season that we've had here relative to where the city was. And it became much bigger than football. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but this fan base has been amazing. And you do this and you travel to cities and you see other venues. This is by far one of the most difficult places to play. And unfortunately we didn't win enough home games this year, but man, the fans are something else. It's not a wine and cheese crowd. People make decisions to buy season tickets here that goes into, their budget relative to what other things they're choosing to do. We appreciate all of that. I have a really good memory and can remember back in 06 when we drafted Reggie Bush and we drafted the rest of that class and the excitement level. I don't have a history. I've met, now Tulane Stadium, Jeff, I'm guessing holds 70-some thousand people. I don't know. All right. But I've met 110,000 people. They told me that they were there for that game and the kick return over the years. And the passion that has been handed down generationally is unbelievable. Because when you're a young kid, you root for who your dad or mom root for. You don't know. And so the amount of stories post 09 season, where a grandparent wasn't alive to see a Super Bowl, but they were, all of that just makes what we do, fulfilling, pretty special. We're teachers, but that's unique. And I don't know that any player back then when we signed on, or any coach, myself included, knew quite actually what we were getting into. And that's the truth. So thank you, City of New Orleans, our fans. I'll be honest, when I hear the Bengals, and I'm rooting kind of for Cincinnati a little bit in the postseason, but the Who Dey thing that came after. I don't know if many of you remember the movie Jerry Maguire. There's a scene in that movie where Tom Cruise is in an office building. He shouts out, "Who's coming with me?" And he grabs a goldfish, and Renee Zellweger says, "I'll come." And they began a journey. And in 2006, 16 years ago, it kind of felt that way at that time. There's a special spot in my heart for the coaches, the staff, the players, everyone who came when 90% of the cars were leaving. I can remember the trip in on I-10, and there was no traffic heading south, but all of it was going north. Coaches like Pete Carmichael, Joe Vitt. Joe Vitt he was the only coach that I hired that year that had a number of other options, and he chose to come. Everyone else, every one of us that came, were all promoted and just paid better. Curtis Johnson, Greg McMahon, Gary Gibbs. And I'm not going to be able to hit on every one of them, but those of you that coached in 06, I can't tell you how thankful I am, because we actually had a rule. We came up with a rule after our first month that no one could say the K word. No one could say Katrina, because there were a lot of reasons for why we weren't going to be successful, and we tried to look past those. So to those coaches, I appreciate it. Here's what will help you be successful, Deuce. You draft Reggie Bush in the first round. He plays 10 years. You draft Roman Harper in the second round. You acquire Jeff Fain. He starts at center. Roman plays 12 or 14 years. You draft Jari Evans in the fourth round. He's going to end up in the Hall of Fame someday. And you also acquire Hollis Thomas, a nose tackle who I was with in Philadelphia. You draft Rob Ninkovich. I'm back to young and dumb here. I'm back to young and dumb. And I don't have a vision. And so we let him out of the building. He comes back in the building, and I tell him he's going to be a long snapper, and then he goes and wins 2 Super Bowls for New England. We make mistakes, but he ended up being a fantastic player. And in the 7th round, you draft the lineman out of Northwestern by the name of Zach Streif. He plays 12, 14 years. He does play-by-play just because he wants to, and then he becomes an assistant coach here. And you draft Marcus Colston with a compensatory 7. So when we talk about the quick window we all have to get started, earn credibility, get your program off the ground, it has to include the procurement of good players. It has to. And we didn't know it then, but those were the pillars, along with any free agent that came. Pierre Thomas is going to come a year later. But those were the pillars of young players that we built on. Now, mind you, we also signed in free agency Scott Fajita. He came we knew each other. Mark Semino, we acquired a week before the season. Scott Shanley, Drew Brees. That's a pretty good group of free agents. We took a chance on Drew at that time because, quite honestly, we weren't going to win any jump balls. And that's the truth. Like, in other words, we had to be a little overly aggressive to win the game, if you will. The status quo and so, man, it was the best chance we took. And so I thank Drew and his wife, Brittany, and their family. I spoke to him at length last night about this decision for the first time, and he was fantastic. And I did call him during this season, and we discussed him coming back. And I think both of us agreed, based on our lineup versus Miami, it was a good thing he stayed and didn't come. I also want to thank the players that were here, that were ready to win, and wanted to join in. Bill taught me that remove the blinders when you're evaluating these guys and understand there's going to be good football players. Deuce, we talked about it just a minute ago. John Stinchcomb. I'm not going to hit everyone. The late Will Smith, Steve Gleason, Charles Grant, Brian Young, Freddie Mac. There were a number of players on that roster that were thriving for this culture change. And therein lied a little bit training camp at Millsaps, and that was difficult. And yet, so there's elements that went into that 06 team that were extremely important. And back to those coaches, myself as the head coach, I kind of feel like we're in this business of serving. We're teachers at heart, and we're grateful to be in this position. Quite honestly, I know for me it was play until they tell you you can't play anymore, and then it's like, well, all right, I don't want to leave though. All right, then you have to coach. And I've always felt grateful to be able to teach and be part of the locker room, even though I wasn't playing. And our roles as teachers are those of service. And so I appreciate that group of coaches and that team. And I still say to this day in 06, we've had a lot of teams, probably teams that are better than the 06 team, but none tougher than that 06 team. None tougher than that 06 team. And that leads me back to that whole city rebirth and fan base and people. That's when I grew to know, like, holy cow, this is bigger. This is bigger than any, this is more than just football. This is more than just football. I didn't know how to eat a crawfish at that time. I was kind of on the beignets, the king cakes with cream cheese, a number of things, but everyone wanted to know, hey, how do you like it here? And honestly, in your first year, when you're not from here, you're figuring it out. Here are the players that have won a Pro Bowl or been selected All-Pro in these 16 years. Teron Armstead. I want you to know this about him. If there's one thing, he is a tremendous leader and a tremendous player. Drew Brees, Jamal Brown, Jermon Bushrod, who's working with us now, tight end Jared Cook, Demario Davis, tremendous leader. Jari Evans, Jonathan Goodwin, Jimmy Graham, J.T. Gray, Ben Grubbs, Roman Harper, Deontay Harris, Mark Ingram, Malcolm Jenkins, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara, Mike Carney, Marshawn Lattimore, Will Lutz, Thomas Morstead, Carl Nix, Andrews Pete, Ryan Ramczyk, Jeremy Shockey, the late Will Smith, John Stinchcomb, Michael Thomas, Jonathan Vilma, Max Unger, Larry Warford. So here's the problem. When you get married in the offseason, you can't invite your team. When you get married somewhere in a different destination, you got to invite maybe your captains of your Super Bowl team but for every one of those players that didn't get an invite, I would have. That would have been awesome. And those that did, they spent enough to make up for the rest of you. But I'm proud to have had the opportunity to work with so many great players. I'm thankful. I mentioned the 06 draft class to get to the 17 draft class. You ready? Because we need another shot in the arm here. Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara, Trey Hendrickson, who's still playing, and we wish him well. It's a people business. And the thing that I'm most proud of is collectively in scouting, Jeff and your group and everyone involved in the procurement process, we've consistently found the right people that fit what we're trying to build. I'm not able to mention every player's name, but I am able to thank every player today. I can't hit on every coach, my current staff. I just, in a staff meeting, told them our record was 9-8, and we didn't get in the playoffs. We're rooting against the Rams right now because of that. But I'm proud of the job they did this year. It was extraordinary. So for every coach who's been here, every scout, every staff member, the people that take care of the facilities, the equipment guys, security, the last word I wrote down is the building. You know, and I've heard that saying, it takes a village. And honestly, it takes a building to be successful. Not in 1 year, but it takes a building to be successful year after year. And for me to have a chance to be a part of that building and in a position to coach so many of these great players and be around so many of these great people. Jay Romick, I can't hit on everyone, but man, the tireless amount of time and energy people spend, especially in the last 2 years, I thank them. I thank them. All right. That's a lot. We're going to have questions here in a minute. I don't know what's next, and it kind of feels good. The last thing I did before I went to bed, I Google searched how not to cry during a speech, and one of the items was drink water and yawn. Well, I didn't want to yawn, but it worked a little bit. So with that, I'll open the floor to questions.
Let's come up to the podium, if you would, for your question right here.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. The question was, why now? Every year you go to training camp, and the one unique thing about our job is it's entirely different than your summer. And I don't know if it was a year earlier, maybe, depending on when Drew retired. Look, he and I never discussed when his last game would be or when I'd be finished. I just felt like this season it was challenging for everyone. but man, I felt like it was time. I felt like it was time. I kind of knew maybe heading into training camp this might, but you don't share that with anyone. You think, well, let's see how the season goes, and we're working hard, and I felt the time was right for me. I felt the time was right, and it's something that I've been thinking about. I think that, look, you have close friends in the industry. I've lost a few close friends in this industry in the last 2 or 3 years. And also, they're forget football. There's other things, spending more time. There's a lot of sacrifices you make. And so not many get to choose their terms. And I looked at it as an opportunity also to see my kids more, to travel some more, to get in better shape, there's an attrition 2 a.m. And I know I hear people say, well, you don't have, yeah, I get it, but I need to. That's the way it works for me. And I think the attention to details are so important that it can be exhausting. And so I felt, as this season was winding down, that it was the right thing. And then the last week and a half, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And now, here's the thing. Our division. So we had won 4 divisions in a row and competed our tail off. Tampa Bay this year won the division, and congratulations. And yet, man, we battled against them. Atlanta and Carolina, they're working to get things going. And so I like the roster. Yeah, there's some challenges, but man, we played good defense this year. Man, our kicking game, Riz and Phil, were outstanding. Consistently in the top 5. And you see a lot of exciting football, but you also see a lot of bad football, and it's hard for the fan to see it. And there's a young group of offensive players, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about that. It was a personal decision of feeling like, it's time. So it's sometimes hard to, but not with any regret. There's some excitement, like, all right, what next? And I honestly don't know what's next. Next question. No. Look, you feel that way going to training camp every year. No, it's been the last season. No, it's been the last season. Now, the hard thing about this game, and you guys know this, the losses are always challenging. The work week, Monday, and there's a little bit of grit that defines players and coaches. And when you get the right group, you respond. We've had some challenging losses. We've had some great wins, and I've always loved how we've responded. I think I love when I hear people say, man, your guys play hard. They're tough. And those are important traits that hopefully, we're part of developing, but it still gets back to the players and the people. But no, I would say it's been more this season. It's too early for that yet. I know this. The question is, how do I want to be remembered? And someone who had passion and someone that cared a lot, winning's important in that. It's important in that. I thought about my mom, if she were alive today. 2 things. I wore this shirt because she always said, you have to wear this color, it matches your eyes. She'd be in her 90s today. Her and my dad are both passed away. But they talk all the time about like leaving a place maybe better than when you got there to begin with. And I think we've done that. and it's not finished. We've got all these coaches that are sitting here with contracts, and Mickey and the leadership in place to continue that. But yeah, we're not writing an obituary today. It's a step. It's just another direction. No, Mike, it's hard to do any of that, right? I think in fairness to Dennis, who's a great candidate in the building, or any other coach that possibly would be hired, I think that there's no half in this game. You know, you're jumping in the deep end and you're swimming. And if you elect to stay out, then that's fine. But I think that, I think that that's the approach that I think has to be taken. Go ahead. Yeah, I don't, and look, they're going to be, I can't control, look, I felt like 10 years went by and we talked about the other team for a lot, and I get it, I understand it, but no, my plans are not to be coaching in 2022, and that's just how I feel. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be your head coach for 16 years. I appreciate each and every one of them. And so thank you for sticking with us in the good times and in the tough times. They've been outstanding. And so it's really that feeling of being grateful for having a chance to have been a part of this organization and coach for them. Thank you. No, look, when I talk to Skylene or when I talk to my children, this isn't something that you can talk with 8 people about today. Even my siblings found out, you know. So no, it was really back to trust your gut and go with your gut. In other words, when does it end? Does it end when you get fired? I said at the beginning, I think it's easier to be fired. As difficult as that is, you thank everybody and they say, well, we wish him well. He made it. But when you choose to leave, I referenced, whether it's been Tony Dungy or whether it's been Bill Cowher or whether it's been, who are the more recent examples just in how to approach this. But yeah, it was a decision ultimately that sat with me, and I'm comfortable with it. All right, my biggest regret first, besides the Ninkovich debacle, would be the double reverse against Tampa Bay. We ran a double reverse against Tampa Bay in the 4-minute and lost the game. And Mickey brought me a study on Ambien and erratic behavior and mood swings with people. I've got a lot of regrets. I mentioned one of them. I wish I would have done a better job early on in my career with the media, and hopefully I corrected that. But yeah, there are always going to be personnel regrets, decisions. But yeah, the double reverse, the Ninkovich decision, that there's a lot. There are. It's easy to say you're most proud of a Super Bowl team, but I'm most proud of the culture in the winning seasons. Our first year here was 06. 07, we played in the Hall of Fame game in Canton. We played the Steelers. I believe it was their 50th. There was an anniversary for Pittsburgh. And so every once in a while as a coach, you get into one of these games you're not really sure about. And we had a player that we had just signed. I can't tell you his name, but he was on Pittsburgh's roster. And it was during training camp. So we're talking about a 90-man roster. It was a wide receiver. We go to Canton. We're playing the Steelers. And come to find out, he was cut because the Steelers had found out he had stolen some stuff from the locker room and from some good players there. And so during pregame warmup for a preseason game, like I noticed the level of intensity is a little bit unusual for a pregame. And anyway, we played that game and got waxed. And we did a tour of the museum, the Hall of Fame. And aside from the Katrina exhibit, there wasn't a Hall of Fame player. Ricky was going to go in, I think, a year or two later. And so I talked to the players a little bit about culture. And now many of them weren't aware of the Steelers story, you know, with Chuck Noll and the years there that they were close. And then finally, you know, they get over the hump. And man, that time frame is shorter now for young coaches, for new coaches. But if you can, that you can build something that that will stay for a while. And so I would say, Larry, it would be how we're viewed today by anyone who's 21, 22 or younger is pretty cool. Pretty good. What will I miss most? I'll miss the people. There's a feeling when something happens in a game and you watch one of your players do something and grow, that any teacher, I think, would tell you is awfully rewarding. Regardless of whether he's a starter, a backup, or a practice squad player, but to see them, a practice squad player, but to see them improve or get better and do something extraordinary, man, like that can fill you. So the relationships and then, you know, the teaching part of it. Impossible, right? I mean, impossible to predict. The question was, you know, how would I have envisioned the ending? Honestly, you don't even think about the ending. Like, you don't have time to think about, oh, what if you don't have time to think about. So for the last, call it maybe week, I've thought about not the ending, but the presentation of the ending, like this. But I don't think when you're young and going fast and trying to build something, you're ever considering what it's going to be like. There's a motivation, a strong motivation when you discuss like fear of failure. That's I think a very real driving force. I honestly had listen, no idea about 15 years. You're just focused on just going and winning and winning and getting more players and people that can help you win. And it doesn't seem like 15 seasons, honestly. It seems probably more like 11. And it's never, I always say this when I see the children of our coaches, when I see Dennis Allen's children or Pete Carmichael's children or CJ's children or Dan Dalrymple, that's what ages you. Because you remember, their ages when you first started. But you see those other people like the same way. You don't see the age, really, because you're around them so much. Listen, honestly, it wasn't excruciating because we were winning. It was exciting. I was just like you. Now, not you covering the game, but I was just like you, the fan. And you don't know how that game, you're playing a team that just won the Super Bowl. And you don't move your cup because it's in the right spot. You don't, all those things took place. And so that was a really good moment. That was a moment that I was so proud for our players and our coaches and everyone that was a part of that win. That was unique, obviously, but it was more just like a fan. There's not like there's communication early in the week relative to some early parts of the game plan, but man, those guys on our staff did a great job. Everyone jumped in and really picked up. The roles maybe were different a little bit, and Ryan Nielsen almost got a bench foul for getting into a shouting match with Brady. But when you watch that game, you saw passion. And so, like I told our team, they won the division. They didn't beat us, so. Yeah, the question relative to hours and workload, they were all different. The guys I worked with, Bill or John or any of these coaches, we kind of had a formula here. It varied depending on the game. Some weeks weren't as long. Part of it's me just wanting to go through it one more time. As a coach, though, you would always be interested in the off season when you're at the Combine or the Senior Bowl, talking with your peers, other coaches, like, hey, what's your schedule like? Because we've been in the last 5 years have been, man, ever changing relative to the off season program. That's changed. And then look, with COVID, it's even changed more, right? So trying to always figure out the best schedule is something that you talk about to your staff. You talk about it like, hey, do we, you guys think we should be in pads today? Do we should be, that's something that you're always looking at. The season didn't weigh on me. Mickey knows this. I'll be honest with you, and I want this to sound the right way. So we've evacuated a couple times, right? We went to Indianapolis. And then I'd say we've had 3 warnings. And in all 3 events, I want to go. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's the perfect chance. Not talking about a crisis. But, you take a team and their family members and an organization to another city is a lot of work and money involved in that. This gets back to Mrs. B and Dennis. Will it help us? Yes. Here's why. And then someday a story on why we chose Jacksonville. And I think Jeff got a lot of it right. Those challenges are exciting. Because I've heard, look, and I'm not offended, but I've heard a lot of people say, man, he looked exhausted. And that was probably more he looked out of shape than exhausted. I'm not offended. I'm all right with that. I'm okay. But that gets back to Doug Miller's Zoom camera angle, honestly. And we miss Greg Benzel being here today. He's getting his gallbladder done. So I told Doug, I want a little elevation. I don't want any cameras that are just staring at my neck from 2 feet away. The season wasn't exhausting. It was exciting. And us moving for 4 weeks was perfect. Obviously not for our city, but I'm just saying relative to building a team where training camps in the last couple of years are just different for obviously good reasons. And so here came this opportunity to develop a team culture and prepare for another season. And so, but this question you're asking, this topic, there's been so many more times where Mickey's like, and I'm like, no, let's do it. Let's definitely do this. And Mickey's like, it's a thunderstorm. I'm like, that's all right. We can go somewhere, or we can do something that heightens the level of awareness. I understand that. Well, think about it, Mike. When does the question get asked? No one asked the fired coach if he was burnt out, right? You ask him, hey, how was your time here? What are you going to do next? What have you? And so we'll figure it out. Yeah, there's an element of, I don't know, burnout seems kind of, it's like the next challenge too sometimes. Like, what's next? What was the end of the question? Yeah, I don't think there was one moment. No, there wasn't a moment where it's like, holy cow. I mean, look, no one had fun the week we played Miami. No, that was what it was. And I understand it. But no, there wasn't that moment where you came back in and said, all right. There were moments that you felt like, man, I don't want to be grumpy about something, soured on something, but I'm pretty upbeat, and I would say raised by my mom in a way, and I say this, both my parents, but my mom was very optimistic, and I think those traits, I feel like I'm that way. And so there's times where, you get heated in the game, and, whether it's a player, coach, or anyone, you might have but I don't really think about it the next day. So there was not that, this is it. I can't point to one. Well, I've only had a chance to talk with a few of them. It's kind of hard. Once again, it gets back to, how do you do this? You have a team meeting and read about it all, or do you have, and so I'll have a chance over the next couple of weeks to visit with a number of players. I saw Mike Thomas earlier. I saw DeMario. I just missed Cam, but one by one, I'll have a chance to visit with with these guys. It's difficult when everyone leaves after the season. No. Look, Mickey and I we shared time just discussing this, and with Miss Gale and Dennis, that'll all take place at the right time. I will always have a place and a part of me here, and I'm waiting to move into another residence, but those decisions will come with hopefully. I just had a meeting with the staff and reflected on a number of things, and hopefully you make an impression like others before me made an impression with me that I don't even know it, but maybe that I'm passing on to future head coaches, future coordinators, future GMs, because I want every one of them to realize those dreams. Like I root for, Doug Marrone when he's being a head coach, and now at Alabama, and Curtis at Tulane, and Dennis at Oakland, and any of these people that were part of this process here, regardless of where they're at, you root for them. I do, and because you want to see them have success, and it's important to our program. And no different than our players. I think it's the hardest thing for a player sometimes when they end up on a different roster. Man, we're pulling for you. Like I'm pulling for Von Bell and Trey. Eli a little bit. Go ahead, Jeff. I look at the short term is nothing, but I'll have to go to the Super Bowl for some, a marketing commitment with Zebra, and that's great. They do a great job, and I enjoy working, with their technology and meeting with some people. I'd like to try TV, and I've had some opportunities, and yet I really don't. I talked to Drew a little bit about it last night. I don't know that part of it that well. But that'd be something that would interest me. And so I think the hardest part is sitting in your chair saying, wait a minute, you haven't talked with a network yet. You haven't talked with, not a word. So hopefully that opportunity comes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the unknown. I mean, all of us, we all get comfortable with certain things, right? We get comfortable in certain shoes. You don't know it till your better half tells you you're going to wear that again. And you realize that it's on like a 4-day rotation instead of, a 12-day rotation. We get comfortable in our jobs. We get comfortable in our relationships. We get comfortable. And every once in a while, and I think this probably plays a big part of it, you don't want to have a regret relative to another challenge or another. And so retirement, I don't think is the right word today. I went through that year of trying to play after college, and friends are getting married, and other friends have health insurance, normal stuff. They're out of college, and bouncing around from the Arena League to the CFL as a backup over in London. And, your parents are like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, and so I got hired. Steve Devine at San Diego State was in charge of graduate assistants. They had 4 then. I got hired over the phone. I flew from London to Chicago, Naperville, where I'm from. I had a Cavalier. It was an older car. I drove from Chicago to San Diego. I broke down in Denver. I didn't have enough money to have my car fixed, so he didn't fix it. The guy helped me out. And there would have been a trip where you're like, man, what are you doing? Like, this is what you're doing. And you have to. Like, that's pretty powerful. Like, you have to. You have to be successful. Like, whatever it is, you got to figure it out quick. And generally speaking, it's work hard, make a good impression. And so I'm sure, John, there's been other moments. There's been setback. Just talking with Dan Rochar, University of Illinois, we get fired as a staff, and where are we going? I think if you look at the path of a lot of coaches, there's that same adversity. Maybe that also appears with players' paths. An injury or a setback, and this one's a little unique in that it's like you're choosing to go outside in the cold and do this. You're choosing to. So, but that's okay. What was 18? Oh, yeah, no, that was a hard way to end the season. No, but that was. No, I think we felt like in all of these years, they run together. Look, we've won more games in the last 5 years than any team in the NFL except the Chiefs. And I'm proud of that. And unless your name is Bill Belichick or Tom Brady, all of us are running after the next one and the next one. And Andy is wanting to get this next one. And Sean is wanting to get his first one. Kyle's wanting to get his first one. And it's challenging and difficult and chasing it, because here's the thing. And I think the hardest thing about the 18 season is you're a game away. You get more excited for the players and the coaches on your team that have never been, they don't understand. And I recall saying this a number of times. I don't know what you think it's like to be in a Super Bowl and win it. So picture that question posed to a player, or for that matter, anyone in here as part of the organization. And then I want you to times it by 100,000. That's how good it is. And it's like, really? 200,000. And even when you look back on those moments where in 2009, when the season ended, you're not ready to stop playing. Like, you're like, I don't want this to stop. And so the frustration later in your career is, you've watched something or done something and you can't wait to show your friend, like, what do you see this movie? And you really want to watch it again, almost more than they want to watch it for the first time. Or experience, like, when do you try this dish? And you're like, I don't want to try that. You're like, no, I'll eat it with you. That is the Super Bowl. And so that's one of the things that you look forward to doing, is watching others' reactions. Like, when you see pregame warm-up, you're not going to feel your feet. You're like, what? Yeah, those are the things I mean, Mike Westhoff, who's been in the league for however many years, this is going to be his first chance. That's what you want for the players, the coaches, and everyone new in the building that wasn't around for that. It's the journey part of it is the most amazing part. So I haven't seen the schedule yet, so I don't know if it's week 1 at home or on the road. No, I think that'll be, it'll be different. It was different. Look, it was different in 2012 for sure. It was different for one game this year against Tampa, but that ended up being pretty good. And I think it'll be different. It'll be, yeah. I don't know that impacted today, Mike. It's a great question. You know, would this day be more difficult to step away had you not won a Super Bowl yet? But the problem is, like, one's not enough. It's not enough. And championship games and, you know, I called Mike Tomlin during the season. Mike Tomlin in week 5 became the 4th fastest coach to win his 150th game in the history of the NFL. Like, and I knew like he was 3 weeks ahead of me, and it was bugging me. And he did it after 232 games, and like 4 weeks later, we do it. And I call him and I said, look, I got to the gas station and they told me you were already here. And it drove me crazy. So there are all these things that are competitively in you that you want to excel at. And that's why I get back to, and I say this with all due respect, and I mean that, when we got here, who's doing this better than anyone? And if you weren't studying New England, then you weren't paying attention. So anytime Bill would say or ask, would you like to practice? Yes. And then when you were practicing, you were kind of like, can we come in? Like, what do you mean? Can I look at your locker room? Can we look at your weight room? We want to learn. And I find it, look, I understand it's their job, but the whole discussion of, was it the chicken or the egg, Bill or Tom or Bill? Are you kidding me? Like, all right, the Hall of Fame is pretty special, and it's got a tremendous legacy of players and coaches and people that have been involved in the game. And so now picture this for a second, Jeff. You got to pick a starting lineup out of the Hall and a head coach. And once their legacy is finalized, the head coach is Bill and the quarterback is Brady. And we can argue about every other position. I have opinions on who the receivers are. I have opinions on who the tackles are, who the defensive backs are. There's no argument relative to, might be a backup Q, might be the assistant head coach that'll help with defense. But that was the team, and that was the crash course. How are they? And you know what? Culture, smart players, selflessness, team, all those things. And obviously a fantastic surrounding cast and a great quarterback, like we were able to acquire here with Drew. Listen, I'm telling you, if like someone said, hey, this is where you're going to be at after 48 minutes, I'd be like, I'll take it. Because I worry about stumbling when I talk with Mickey or about Mickey. I worried about stumbling when I talk about Drew Brees. Stumbling meaning having to drink this water. And I'm just bringing up two examples. But like what personally those two people have meant to my career, it's you can't put a price on it. So I don't know that I feel comfortable, but I began to feel more comfortable, I think, after I gave Mrs. Benson the Ted Lasso biscuit. Hard. You know, you have something you have to do, and it's like you're not procrastinating it, because quite honestly, it's a little embarrassing in that we're right in the middle of the playoffs, and you don't want to be like we just had a great weekend of football, like unbelievable, and we're getting ready to have another great weekend with the championship games, and so you don't want to be a distraction to that, honestly, and so it's kind of like that. You want it to hurry up and you want to do it. Yeah, you want to do it. And then it's like, all right, how do you do a good job of it? And how do you thank everybody? Like, who am I missing today? I'm sure I'm missing someone, and I apologize. But as a player here, as a coach here, someone that was a part of our organization, like, it's the building. That's what I'm most proud of. And that's what I'm grateful for. Well, that went back to the irrational behavior with Ambien. I slept okay. Well, here's what happens sometimes, Catherine. The game ends. Like, all right, Connor and Megan. Connor was maybe 9 when we won a Super Bowl. Megan, 13. I'm just guessing ages, right? But I have pictures of them on the podium. You know, Connor blowing a bubble and Megan with a broken forearm from cheerleading. And man, life is good to be the child of a coach who's just won the Super Bowl. And then there are these other games where it's been a tough loss. They see you afterwards. They're not tearful, but they're emotional. And they're like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm all right. Like, it's what I do, but it's not who I am. And now they're at an age where they understand that, you know. My daughter, after seeing this over, you know, the period of her young life, decided I'm gonna cover coaches and be a reporter on coaches. And my son, who wants to become in the front office someday, scout, and be a GM someday, said, I'd rather hire and fire the coaches. That's what I'd rather do. And he's awfully smart. And so yeah. I think there's 2 or 3 cities. So Larry asked a question like, all right, head coaching advice. You have to be yourself. The best advice I ever got, and it was in a book, my head coach in high school, this gets back to being touched by the right people, and you don't even know it's happening. But, you know, as a parent, the greatest gift you can ever receive is when someone, teacher, music teacher, professor, anyone of influence loves your child for a short period of time, every bit as you love them. That's pretty powerful. Like when someone makes an impact with your child, that's and my high school coach did, and it wasn't always perfect, but he had in the cover of his book, just be fair. It's much easier to be fair than trying to appear to be fair. You know how much trouble like you get into when you're trying to appear something, and so that was pretty good. Relative to the fan base, just sink it in and take it in, and it's a great football fan base. There might be 2 or 3 others in the world like it, similar to it. And man, how fortunate, like for me at a young age to happen on a head coaching position with it. 05 season, 06, like right after. And look, some things like we got off to a decent start in 06, tough game at Cleveland. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember the song playing on the field pregame, and it was a country song about Sundays or something. I can remember Green Bay is when the first time I thought Drew's arm's going to be okay, and I kept yelling at Pete before then, like, is this it? And Drew knows this story. It's like, because I didn't have, Pete had the reference as to what it was when it was fully recovered. But he made a pass to Colston on a pylon for a touchdown. We came back. We were down 13. We won that game. Atlanta week 3. And then all of a sudden, like anything else, you guys have heard me say this, confidence like can develop, but it's from demonstrated behavior. And that's what you're watching right now when you watch San Francisco play. Like it's evolving. And they're the team that Tampa was a year ago. And that's powerful in sport. Yeah, I think that's an easy question. I think anytime you're discussing relationships, it's the willingness that both parties have in making sure it's strong. And I think relative to Drew being the quarterback for that long, or Mickey and I, or Pete, or any coach, it's the common goal of like, number one, we like each other, but also we each want to, we're each pushing for the same success. And so those like-minded goals are positive. And I think they help that. Mickey, Gail, and Dennis. That's it. I mean, because I didn't talk with anyone. Like, Mickey, and down the hall to Gail, and then down the hall to Dennis in that order. And then Dennis again, and Mickey and Gail. No, I spent a week confirming what I believed, and that was smart. But I wouldn't say, man, we finished the Atlanta game, beating Atlanta, and in the locker room watching the end of that game in overtime, that it was like, well, this is it. Like, I wasn't saving programs or I think it was something a little bit more. I thought it could be it. This might be it, and if this is it, and you beat Atlanta one more time, that's pretty cool. I don't know that you have to organize your thoughts arriving at the decision is more than just give thought to, all right, Why? Like, in other words, how do you see this next year unfolding? There's like a lot of things. You put a list together of things that you want to do, like simple things, and then a list of more complex things, and then a list of like what you'd like to do. And you weigh it against, I mean, and this is important, I think, because there have been mixed. I've got 3 more years under contract here. So I've just completed year 2 of a 5-year deal, and it certainly wasn't about compensation, money, or any of that. Because of that, I'm able to make a decision, where there's uncertainty, and yet, it's a decision you couldn't make when you were younger because you had to work. That's all. How much? Well, I think when you win, this is always funny. I always argue with the marketing people. I think you got to win. You can market, and marketing's extremely important. But man, the view never changes when you're on top. And that part, the importance of having success, and that's how we're measured in a highly competitive field. It's extremely important. And you work 3 years for a Hall of Fame coach like Parcells. Man, you learn so much. You learn so much. And prior to that, you work for the New York Giant organization, go to a Super Bowl, playoffs. You learn a lot. The Mara family, Tisch family, all those people that were instrumental in my early growth. Philadelphia, the Lurie family, and my first job, getting hired by Gruden and Ray Rhodes and those guys. And here's the staff. You ready? 97, 98. John Harbaugh, myself, David Shaw, Gruden, Juan Castillo, line coach, Vitt, coach forever, Emmett Thomas, Hall of Fame player, great coach, Mike Turgeback. I'm going to keep going. Bill Callahan, former head coach. There were all of us just working and to later then see the success and to be just a small, like when I say, man, get coffee, cut up tape, but be able to be a part of stuff like that. It's not till later that you were like, man, I was fortunate. Anything that in regards to? Yeah. All right. What do you miss? Thanksgivings are always good. We play on Thanksgiving. It's not difficult. Christmas is hard. And I don't know. Outside of that, I thought Jazz Fest was like late summer. Oh, so yeah, Jazz Fest is not impossible. We haven't had it in a while, right? The biggest thing is the stuff you miss with your families and your children. And, they're older now, but they open up a gift and I'm like, do you like it? And you're like, yeah, but I know mom bought it, I mean, it's hard. Some of those things are hard, but I think that's the case with any job. There's certain pros and certain cons, you know, and so whether it's a night job, whether it's a day job, whether it's weekends, whether you're in the military, yeah. But I'm sure there'll be things. I haven't gone to a tailgate ever. And I go by one like every day on the way to the Superdome with the way I come in under the duct. I see them and I'm like, they're having more fun than me right now. I'd make a left and a right, go through the stadium parking, head in, and then it's always tough getting out, you know, leaving. But those people aren't worried about third down. Jenny's, it will still be possible. I promise the tradition. What's the best way to say it? For the near and coming future. So we do a thing here. I say we. Jenny's ice cream has been great, and you know how Christmas gifts after a while, the turkeys, the hams, whatever it is. But I think that's one like little tradition. I was late this year. Sorry, and I guarantee you I didn't probably hit everyone. I always like, you know, make sure Greg, Doug, we check this list. Is there anyone we're missing? But for the challenge this year, scheduling wise, was unique anyway. So that'll be ongoing. Yeah. So how have things changed facility wise? This indoor was a great facility for us. We've changed how it looks. You know, we're fortunate right down the road to have crystal clear imaging, and you can pretty much take a picture and within, you know, 2 days, blow it up and have it here. The banners, those have changed. There's a lot more of them. Weight rooms completely different. Meeting rooms, the interior design. When I was suspended, there's a remodel of the building, and Mrs. B was real smart to take advantage of that. And so I had like an old deer head, and I never hunted before, and an alligator. I had all these things that sat in the office of like the stereotypical coach that you remember on TV. And when I came back, the building had been remodeled. And there was like an oriental carpet that's still in there. Pictures were like to the T. And I appreciate that. And so much has changed. And every year it's changing. We always felt like we wanted the players to come back to a look that was necessary, but also different. You know, a new training room, which was remarkable, a big deal. The locker room, cafeteria here in the future, the meeting rooms that are getting redone now. It's always improving, moving forward, not necessarily for recruiting, but really more so for functionality and being, you know, do we need it? All right. And then what is it we need? And then let's do it. And back to Dennis, Mrs. B, Mickey, and everyone that's a part of that. And it's important that it starts with, do we need it? How's it going to benefit us? Good.
Well, folks, a surprising end to a successful career. And I can't underscore the word success enough. He had Super Bowl title, he had 10 win seasons, a winning percentage of 63.1. That's not bad. Okay. That's not bad. He was even AP coach of the year once. Arguably, if the Saints had made the playoffs, I think he would have been coach of the year this last season, considering what he went through too. But that did not come to pass because, well, the Rams had something. The Rams and the 49ers contest had something to say about that. But he put up with a lot of challenges.
Is when I have anxiety. I don't think that moment was lost on Jerry Jones. So is it conceivable that Mike McCarthy gets another year? Absolutely.
So someone's
Will it be as hot a seat as you can imagine? Yes. Because
take those folks out. I didn't do that, folks. They're still there. And so let me just get rid of that and come on here and share my thoughts about this. And first of all, I want to thank Andy Dolich for coming on again. We'll see. We'll be back Friday. And Sean talked for, 1 hour and 34 minutes by my count, thereabouts. We've been on for 2 hours and 11 minutes and 22 seconds and counting. But he didn't mention, I think the conference was notable for what he didn't talk about. He didn't talk about the elephant in the room, which is the quarterback situation. And because they have somebody on Twitter is running this cut and paste where they go back and they say, okay, if I had Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston, I retire too. And there are people who basically take that tweet and copy it and paste it, and you check out the Twitter account. Okay. All right. Checked about the Twitter account. And you discover that it's a Twitter account that has nothing to do with Saints or NFL. It's a troll account. So someone's running these troll accounts in this effort to consistently discredit Jameis Winston, which is completely ridiculous. I believe it's this Russian fellow that has some connection to Trump. There's evidence to point to that. And they would say, why would they care? Because they've identified what they believe are these tentpole conversations that have to do with race, and they use them to continually divide the country. That's the idea. And if it sounds sick to you, it's because it is sick. Now, no one talked about the cap either. But see, here's how I look at the cap situation from the perspective of how I thought Sean Payton would be thinking prior to this day. And it is, hey, we have a challenge to build a new team. And that's exciting. We have a challenge to develop a new mix of the current with the new. And we can experiment and try different approaches. But he didn't say that. And maybe he was just so comfortable with Drew Brees that once Drew left, and there were a lot of things that he took for granted in that relationship in terms of knowing what plays he wants and that sort of thing, that he didn't know how to replicate. Okay. And as Garvey just wrote on Twitter, he's old and didn't want to restart deep down. Yeah. I mean, he got remarried. He is at that place. I mean, I understand that feeling. I'll be 60 this year, and you know what you want and you know what you don't want. You know what you want to do again, and you know what you can't do. And mentally, your brain changes. There are only certain things there are some things you just don't want to do anymore. There are also some things you wonder if you can do. Okay, there's that too. I'm not saying that's a factor. I don't know, but the fact that he's retiring at this time points to the possibility that it could be. To me, he went out just 1 year short of proving himself again and then coming back. Okay? That's how I look at it right now. Now, if he turns around and next week says, I changed my mind and I'm going to coach the Raiders, and it's like, whoa, here we go. But he says he's not going to do that. He can change his mind, but I take the man at his word. Okay? I do. So from the talk, I don't see the Saints going out and looking for a head coach. I see the Saints elevating a coach. Let me see if there's been any confirmation regarding that. And it may be either, well, he keeps mentioning Dennis Allen. So I think Dennis Allen will have the job next. And I think Dennis will get a second chance at bat after the Raiders. And but Ian Rappaport reported 3 hours ago, expect the Saints to interview Dennis Allen, considered the leading candidate, and Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn for their now vacant head coaching job. Saints Wire writes that Dennis is a natural heir for Sean Payton, but the Saints must conduct the search. That's by rule, Rooney rule. I guess you can't. You have to give folks that look like me a chance to talk to you and let you know why we think that we're the best person for the job. That's only right. All right. And that's why a number of people have raised the name Brian Flores as a coach. And I think Brian Flores would be an outstanding selection. My concern, however, is continuity. The Saints do have a formula that Sean installed. And I just don't think that, someone put it out there that I think it's time, they thought it was time to blow it up. And I think that was, in retrospect, that was more a warning than a desire. And that someone said that last week. And I got to go back and now find where I heard that, because someone was quoting that someone else had said the Saints are going to blow it up. It's time to blow it up. Well, why? I don't know why it is. And I don't think so. I think the Saints had a lot more good than bad. And they had a season that they had an inordinate number of injuries. They had an injury to their star quarterback. So there's a lot there that that was just weird, okay? It doesn't mean it's going to happen like that the next year, all right? So I'm going to do this. I've been on now for longer than I expected, but for a good reason. And I want to see if actually I don't see any tweets from Jameis Winston. I checked Instagram as well. Checking Taysom Hill. And Sean Payton's last game was beating the Falcons with Taysom Hill. Says so it's someone says he gave Taysom Hill $100 million and dipped. Having Taysom Hill be your quarterback would do that. Taysom Hill threw a few passes, and Sean Payton says, I can't do this blank anymore. But I don't think that he was the one that gave him that Taysom Hill extension. I think they had to do that. There's something else behind the scenes. He's not talking about it. He's not mentioning it. Because it's very odd that you would go out and not mention your quarterbacks. Something's going on there that I do think perhaps did lead to this. And I go with this. I don't think, as much as people claim otherwise, I don't think Sean wanted to put Taysom Hill in there that way. I think, in fact, he said it. He had actually went out and tried to get other quarterbacks to come in. But I contend that he didn't, and this is where maybe it's a good idea that Sean takes some time away and looks at the game with different eyes before he comes back. But it seemed like he really got kind of stuck in certain approaches and didn't understand how to adjust for the speed, today's speed, in certain circumstances. Now, having Jameis Winston gave him the luxury of throwing, a luxury he didn't have before, which is why I still am puzzled that he would leave. I mean, he has a weapon, and someone's mentioned cap issues, but you can move around your cap. All right. Byron Leftwich is the guy for the job. They could bring in Byron with Jameis. That would be a great marriage. But they do have a system that Jameis Winston learned that Pete Carmichael ran as offensive coordinator. So there's that hanging out there. I think what'll happen is the Saints will go through the perfunctory process, and I think they'll turn around and they'll hire Dennis Allen. And that'll be that. And really, that is the logical choice. Okay. That is the logical choice. They might, because I don't think the Saints feel like, and there's no reason for the, particularly defensively, to feel like, hey, we're going to blow it up. Unless, here's a possibility, unless they talk to Brian Flores and believe that Brian can really make their defense even better, if you can imagine that. But then, okay, says, well, keep our offensive staff. Lyncho says, I think Sean's system work on accuracy from Drew. Not sure you're still with this is completely wrong, Lyncho, and I'll tell you why. I want you to read the playbook from the New York Giants when Sean Payton was offensive coordinator, and that playbook is based on Bill Walsh's offense. I want you to learn that, because a lot of you that are commenting here know nothing about football, and I'm just being blunt. When I say know nothing about football, you don't have an appreciation for formations, for the history of the formations. For example, who created the Brown formation? What was Paul Brown? You might be asking who Paul Brown was. That's the question. Coach of the Cleveland Browns and is a father of the modern pro football passing game, along with Sid Gilman. Those are the words that should come out of your mouth, among others, about Paul Brown alone. You should understand the underpinnings of what got us here. And a lot of you don't. Because if you did, you'd understand that, for example, the Buccaneers, when they had Winston, they were not running a ball control passing offense. They're running a long offense, and they weren't focused on timing. And they got Jameis Winston not because he was Joe Montana, but because he could throw deep. Okay. Accuracy is trained, not just trained as a quarterback. Accuracy comes in the play itself. Okay. There's some accuracy comes in the play itself. It's drawing up the play. And when the play is drawn up, you understand that it has certain rules. The play is the map for you. All right. The play is the map for you. And that play, when it's drawn up by coaches, should be detailed enough to show you what you want done. Okay. And why? Let me give you an example from Bill Walsh's offense, it's called controlling the football, the passing game. And let me pull it up. This is what you should look at. This is what you should pay attention to. Learn this, because it will change how you look at football. It should, if you're a football fan. All right. It will change how you look at football. And trying to pull it up on here, and I think I'm getting out of memory here. So I can't quite pull it up like I want to. So I'm just going to have to say, I'll write it down. There's a play that it's called 22ZN. ZN. And for years, this play was the staple base play of Bill Walsh's offense. And the play is used to teach the basics of the West Coast offense: drop back timing, footwork, progression reads. And the progressions are listed. It was Bill Walsh that actually caused this. Here we go. Right here. It was Bill Walsh that actually caused these, by the success of his system, to bring in the term progression into the modern parlance. All right. But look at the play it's highlighted. See how detailed it is in descriptions and yards and cuts. All right. This is your roadmap. And then compare that to plays from other systems. Now, Lance, you said, I know Bill Walsh. Let's time out. I really knew Bill Walsh. I interviewed him. Okay. So you say you know Bill Walsh. Yeah, I interviewed him. I even had Tony Franklin on recently. Gruden's book is not the book you need to read to learn about Bill Walsh. Building a Champion by Bill Walsh is the book you should have on your bookshelf, because that is by Bill Walsh. Okay. I knew Bill Walsh. I interviewed him in 1994 when I was columnist with Montclair in Oakland. I know Ronnie a lot personally to this day. I can go on and on and on. I worked to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland. We lost to Jacksonville. So I have a very long history with this stuff. Anyway, and folks, including Eddie DeBartolo. So my point is, it's a different way of thinking. Football today is sloppy. It's patterns, okay? But it's not footwork and timing. People spend more time looking at formations than they do footwork and throwing. Look at Jameis Winston's release. It's short, compact, and efficient. And that's by training. All right? He practices that. And where I have a jumping off point with how Sean was teaching his quarterbacks is he didn't have an effective way of transferring that to his quarterbacks so that the performance from quarterback to quarterback was efficient. Okay. You don't want to be married to just Drew Brees. Bill Walsh wasn't. He had Joe Montana and Steve Young. Okay. And then look at Stanford, where he had Steve Stenstrom and Jason Columbus. Bill Walsh didn't have one quarterback. Drew Brees will be known for one quarterback unless he comes back. He should be known for Jameis Winston because he really turned Jameis' career around just by putting him in a ball control passing offense. Now, the question I have is, hey, will Jameis turn around and go to the Bucs? It doesn't look like that. But hey, you know what? If Tom Brady retires, things change. Okay? Gruden was not the quarterback coach for Bill Walsh. John Gruden never directly worked for Bill Walsh. Let's just put that on the table, okay? John Gruden worked for Andy Reid, who was on Walsh's staff, but Gruden, that wasn't Gruden. Gruden was younger. Bill Walsh's first offensive coordinator was Mike Holmgren. Okay. And then Mike Holmgren later became, as you know, coach of the Packers. And then Paul Hackett, whose son Nathaniel Hackett is being interviewed for head coaching jobs right now. Paul Hackett was, I believe, the second offensive coordinator for Bill Walsh. So no, okay. So and then of course, when George Seifert took over, Seifert had Mike Shanahan, Holmgren for Mike Shanahan. And so And so Mike Shanahan took what he learned and he took it to Denver. All right. In terms of the Walsh approach. But the approach really is such that you have a way of throwing the football. And then Steve Mariucci also understood within the 49ers the Walsh system. I interviewed Steve Mariucci, and he's a friend to this day. If you go to Zenny62 here, type Steve Mariucci, you can see my interviews with him. Great guy. I need to call him. But they all preach precision passing. Okay. And that's lost on a lot of coaches today. There's a lot of sloppy passing. At the same time that there are a lot of defenders that are just superhumanly fast. So we need to reintroduce the importance of timing in the passing game and design, because the players are so fast on defense that it used to be, hey, you'd have a 7-step drop. Then we got rid of the 7-step drop for 5-step. Why? Speed. So now we have to go from a 5-step to a 3-step, or from the shotgun, it's 2-step or 1-step. All right. But there's some people who insist on pushing the ball downfield, even though the defenders are superhuman. It's stupid. Anyway. All right. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes. I'll be back to talk about this later. And thank you for your commentary, Lynn Cho and Janice. Who says Jameis has been in vertical downfield offense his whole career. He would be fine with Leftwich. He doesn't need a West Coast system to be successful. But Janice, he was in a West Coast system with Sean Payton. And you should just get the Payton. And I'll come back and do a program on the Payton playbook, so because it's important to understand who did what and why. Sean Payton ran a ball control passing offense. In fact, I said that Jameis Winston would flourish in a ball control passing offense before the Saints put him in one. Okay, that was last year. The video is also here on Zenny62 on YouTube. So yeah, I forecasted the thing. Thank you, Lincho. And with that, I'll hey, nice to see you. And that I'll head out. Come back later, everybody. About 10 o'clock. We'll see you. So, thank you. That ends this broadcast. And subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark Oakland News.